Hi, we're going over chapter 12 today, which is tooth morphology. When you are looking at tooth morphology, there is a certain amount of varying among individual teeth. So, not all teeth are the same. They're not shaped the same. They're not positioned the same. So, you have to understand tooth morphology for oral diagnosis and treatment planning, intraoral and extraoral radiographic imaging. It's going to help you to know what types of film to take on certain teeth and how to and where to mount those radiographs. For oral health and prevention of disease, restorative and specialty procedures, categories and applications of dental materials, and when you're doing expanded functions when you get to that. So morphology means the shape of teeth. When we're looking at anterior dentition, anterior permanent dentition, there are 12 anterior teeth in the permanent dentition, 6 in each arch. They go from canine to canine. So they include the central incisors, the lateral incisors, and the canines. All anterior teeth are succedaneous, meaning they replace primary teeth of the same type. Permanent teeth tend to be the first to erupt. Permanent anterior teeth tend to be the first to erupt and replace primary teeth. And generally, they are the mandibular central incisors that are the first to be replaced. When we go to permanent incisors, there are 8 permanent incisors, 4 maxillary and 4 mandibular, 2 central incisors and 2 lateral incisors in each group. These teeth complement each other in form and function. The lateral incisors erupt about a year or so before, or the central incisors erupt about a year or so before the lateral incisors do. So you're going to have 4 maxillary and 4 mandibular incisors. You're going to have 2 central incisors on the top and 2 lateral incisors on the top. 2 central incisors on the bottom, 2 lateral incisors on the bottom. So you're going to have one of each in every quadrant. The mandibular incisors are smaller than the maxillary incisors. This means that the mandibular canine is normally mesial to the maxillary canine because the maxillary incisors are smaller and skinnier. They're normally the smallest teeth in the dentition. Now, when we go on to the posterior permanent dentition, it includes the premolars and molars. The crown of each posterior tooth has an occlusal surface where the anterior teeth have the incisal edge. They don't have an occlusal surface because the incisal edge is for cutting into things or incising. Like if you were to bite into a sandwich or a Snickers bar, you would use your anterior incisal edge. For the posterior teeth on the premolars and molars, we have occlusal surfaces. And on those occlusal surfaces, that is where we mash and grind our teeth, our food, I'm sorry. Hopefully we're not mashing and grinding our teeth. The crown of the posterior tooth has an occlusal surface bordered distally and mesially by marginal ridges. On the occlusal surface, you will find 2 or more cusps. So those are those little mountain things that you see on the flat surfaces of the posterior teeth or the occlusal surfaces. So if you imagine each cusp as a mountain with a sloping area or cusp ridges extending from the top of the mountain, between the ridges are sloping areas called inclined cuspal planes. So the posterior dentition is important in grinding and chewing food in maintaining the surface of the face or the shape of the face. For permanent premolars, we have 8 premolars in the permanent dentition, 2 in each quadrant. They're located posterior to the canines and immediately anterior to the molars. There are two types of premolars. There's a first premolar and a second premolar. Premolars are always anterior to the molars, so they come in before the molar. So think before. So the premolars are before the molars. But you do need to take into consideration that there are not premolars in the primary dentition. Primary dentition, there are only 20 teeth in the primary dentition, where there are 32 in the adult dentition. When we look at primary teeth, they only have incisors, canines, and molars. So they do not have premolars. When you transition from primary to permanent dentition, when the molars of the primary dentition exfoliate or fall out, when the new teeth erupt and replace them, they are replaced with premolars. So the primary molars are replaced with premolars, and that's because the adult molars actually come in behind where the primary dentition ends. There are only 20 teeth in the primary dentition, 10 teeth on each quadrant, or each arch, I'm sorry. And as the mouth grows and the jaw grows, as that child grows, the molars actually grow in behind where those baby teeth are initially set. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the primary dentition. So there are 20 primary teeth, 10 in the maxillary arch and 10 in the mandibular arch. So like I said, they only have incisors, canines, and molars. Instead of being numbered with numbers, they are numbered with capital letters A through T. The primary teeth are smaller overall and have wider enamel than the permanent teeth. The crown of a primary tooth is short in relation to its overall total length. So if you extract a primary tooth, the root is a lot longer than the crown of it is. We often call the primary teeth baby teeth, milk teeth, but their proper name is primary teeth. So the older term for that is deciduous. So if you hear the term deciduous, they are talking about primary teeth. So just keep in mind that in the adult dentition, there are 32 teeth. They're numbered 1 through 32, and they start counting at the upper right, the very first tooth in the mouth. That is number 1 with the third molar, and it concludes at the lower right, the very last tooth in the mouth with the third molar. That is number 32. In the primary dentition, we still start counting at the upper right. The very first tooth is the second molar, which is tooth A, and it concludes at the lower right at the second molar on the lower right with tooth T, because it's A through J on the top and K through T on the bottom because the teeth are lettered. Thank you.